Chapter 796. Jeffrey and Jameson were stunned by the shock and kept backing away. However, all the doors were shut. They leaned on the door of the yard and trembled in fear, looking at Dean like he was a monster. Dean watched the cultivators on the floor. He sneered coldly and said, "You dare act arrogantly in front of a saint-level cultivator, puny ambience-level cultivators, you deserve this." Gavin and Sawyer were using all their energy to battle the wilting effect, so they had no spare energy to talk. Yolanda felt afraid at that moment, but she still said, "What are you doing, Leo? You can't mess with the Xanders." "I'm messing with you right now. What can you do about it?" Leo looked malicious at that moment. His dirty deeds were exposed, so he had no choice but to kill them. It was not like he had not done it before. Jeffrey immediately said, "We apologize, Mr. Zeth. We were spewing nonsense. Let's forget about it, all right?" "Right. We made a mistake. Santino Webb was being nonsensical, and we shouldn't have listened to him. We'll hand him over to you. Can you please let us go?" asked Jameson. The brothers finally realized how serious it was. Leo was merciless, and he had a saint-level cultivator with him. They felt like they would die if things escalated. Yolanda finally caved in. She did not expect that Leo would dare attempt murder again. She saw how malicious Leo was, and how powerful Dean was. She was trembling from fear, and she did not dare to say another word. She only nodded in agreement behind her sons. Santino sighed and stepped forward. He put away his weapon and said slowly, "This is all my fault. I shouldn't have spoken against you, Mr. Sith. I'm willing to accept any punishment. Please let the Xanders go." Leo laughed out loud. He looked at them and shook his head, saying, "You just have to do it the hard way. Do you expect me to let you go at this point? Aren't you a little too naive?" Harper also laughed at the side. He thought Yolanda was too stupid and ignorant. It was only natural for Leo to have a powerful backup if he dared to attempt murder. He could not believe the Xanders would dare to look for trouble. They were just asking for it. It was too late to beg for their lives now. A terrifying pressure erupted from Dean, once more suffocating the Xanders and leaving them pale and terrified. Santino knew that they could not leave. He looked at Yolanda and shook his head. He said, "Perhaps there's still hope for us if Mr. Penn is here, alas." "What can he do about it?" asked Yolanda. Yolanda believed that her youngest son was useless. The people he knew must be useless too. Her opinion of Jean seemed to be deeply rooted in her core. She almost blurted her thoughts out subconsciously. Santino let out a long sigh and stopped talking. He formed a longsword again, and he was ready to battle to the death. He knew that he was no match for Dean, but he did not care anymore. He might as well die as compensation for what he did to Mr. Xander, so he could at least redeem himself. Dean scoffed coldly at that moment. He continued forming seals with his hands. A ball of gray spiritual flame surged to the sky. It burned brightly and emitted an astounding spiritual pressure. They felt like their hearts were going to stop beating. Yolanda and her son started to roll their eyes because of the spiritual pressure, feeling like they were about to pass out. Santino roared at that moment to elevate all his spiritual energy. He sprinted toward Dean. The longsword in his hand emitted a blade energy that was several meters long. Runes could be seen as he slashed down. He was the only person who could fight back at that moment. That was his ultimate attack. That attack contained all his spiritual energy, his might, and the endless guilt in his heart. The power of that attack was as good as a peak ambience level cultivator. It was his best attack ever. However, Dean sneered coldly at his attack and merely snapped his fingers. A ball of gray spiritual energy shot out toward him. The blade energy clashed with the gray spiritual energy and was disintegrated into nothingness.